First contact in the dark. Dr. Sarah Chen stared at the readout on her quantum interferometer for the third time, her hands trembling slightly as she reached for her coffee. The signal wasn't disappearing. If anything, it was getting stronger. After 15 years of scanning the void between stars at the Kuiper Belt Research Station, she had finally found something that defied explanation. Mason, she called out to her research partner, trying to keep her voice steady. I need you to verify something. Dr. Mason Rodriguez looked up from his own workstation, his weathered face illuminated by holographic displays. He had spent 2 decades searching for extraterrestrial signals, and the excitement in Sarah's voice made him move faster than he had in years. What have you got? He asked, making his way across the cramped observation deck. The station's minimal gravity made his movements appear almost graceful despite his age. Look at these patterns, Sarah said, highlighting a sequence of quantum fluctuations. They're ordered, too ordered to be natural. Mason leaned in, his eyes widening as he processed the data. The signal was unlike anything in their database, a series of precise quantum entanglement patterns that seemed to bypass normal space-time limitations. It appeared to be coming from a point near Neptune's orbit, but the signal characteristics suggested it originated from much further away. Run a full spectrum analysis, he said, already pulling up additional monitoring protocols, and get Director Hayes on the line. Within hours, the small research station was buzzing with activity. Teams of scientists worked in shifts, analyzing every aspect of the mysterious signal. Director Hayes had arrived from her quarters in the main hub, bringing with her a level of urgency that made everyone work faster. It's definitely artificial, Sarah explained to the gathered senior staff. The quantum signature shows signs of technological manipulation far beyond our current capabilities. But here's the strange part. It's not just a signal. It's a beacon, and it's responding to our presence. The room fell silent. Director Hayes, a tall woman with steel-gray hair and eyes that had seen humanity's first steps into the outer solar system, spoke first. Responding how? Sarah brought up a 3-dimensional visualization of the signal patterns. Every time we attempt to analyze it, it adjusts its frequency to become more readable by our instruments. It's like it's learning about us, or testing us, Mason added quietly. Before anyone could respond, every screen in the observation deck suddenly flickered. The quantum signal had changed dramatically, forming clear patterns that their computers began translating automatically. As the message appeared on the main display, the assembled scientists read it with a mixture of awe and apprehension. Humanity has been observed. Protocol Artemis initiated. Prepare for assessment. Director Hayes immediately activated the station's secure channel to Earth's Solar Defense Command. This wasn't just first contact. It was a revelation that changed everything humanity thought they knew about their place in the cosmos. The next 48 hours were a blur of activity. Military vessels were dispatched from Mars and Earth, while scientists worked around the clock to understand the implications of the message. Sarah and Mason led the analysis team, piecing together a disturbing picture. The quantum technology in this signal, Sarah explained during an emergency briefing. It's not just advanced. It's impossible by our understanding of physics. Whoever sent this has broken through barriers we thought were fundamental laws of the universe. But why now? Mason questioned, pointing to historical data. We've been detecting quantum fluctuations for decades. Why reveal themselves just as we're beginning to understand quantum entanglement technology? The answer came 3 days later, when their instruments detected something massive emerging from behind Neptune. The object was unlike anything human eyes had ever seen. A structure that seemed to bend space itself around it, composed of materials that appeared to shift between states of matter. As the enormous object moved closer, new signals began flooding their receivers. The translation algorithms worked faster now, having learned from the initial contact. The message they decoded sent shockwaves through the scientific community. Human species, your development has exceeded predicted parameters. Standard observation protocols have been compromised. Direct intervention has been authorized. Sarah looked out the observation window at the distant point of light that represented the alien object. Humanity had dreamed of first contact for centuries, imagining themselves reaching out to the stars. Instead, they discovered they had been watched all along, living in what amounted to a cosmic petri dish. Director Hayes gathered her senior staff one final time before evacuating non-essential personnel. "Whatever happens next," she said, her voice firm, "remember that humanity didn't get this far by following anyone else's parameters. If we're being tested, then let's show them exactly what humans do when backed into a corner." As if in response to her words, the quantum signal changed again. This time, the message was shorter, but its implications were enormous. "Prepare for inspection. Resistance is inadvisable than expected." Sarah and Mason shared a look. Humanity had already begun preparing their response, but not in the way their observers might expect. Deep in research facilities across Earth, scientists were already analyzing the quantum signals, learning from them, adapting them. It was what humans did best: take the impossible and make it possible, take the unknowable and understand it. The game of cosmic hide and seek was over. Now it was time for humanity to show why they had survived and thrived on a planet that should have killed them long ago. The observers were about to learn that their test subjects had outgrown the laboratory. The hidden protocol. The underground facility beneath Geneva hummed with activity as the world's leading scientists gathered in what had quickly become humanity's response center. Dr. Sarah Chen's holographic projection dominated the central display, her findings from the Kuiper Belt station now the focus of intense scrutiny. "The quantum signatures aren't just a message," she explained, manipulating the data with practiced gestures. "They're a key to understanding how we've been watched for centuries. Look at these temporal markers." Dr. Yuki Tanaka, Earth's foremost expert in quantum archaeology, leaned forward in her chair. Her team had spent the last week analyzing historical data, finding patterns that had been invisible until now. "These signatures match anomalies we've detected at major historical turning points: the Industrial Revolution, the digital age, the quantum breakthrough. They were watching it all." The room erupted in murmurs as Yuki brought up her own data. Historical events that had previously seemed like natural technological progression now appeared suspiciously guided, or perhaps, more disturbingly, constrained. "That's not the worst part," Mason Rodriguez added, his aged face grim even through the holographic projection. "We've detected similar signatures in our genetic record. They haven't just been watching our technology. They've been monitoring our evolution." Director Hayes, now coordinating humanity's response from the Geneva facility, stood up. "Show them what you found in the ancient samples." Sarah nodded, bringing up a new display. "We analyzed genetic samples from every major archaeological site on Earth. The quantum signatures are there, going back at least 100,000 years. But here's where it gets interesting. They start to fade about 10,000 years ago. That's when we believe humanity began exceeding their predictions." Dr. James Wilson, head of the newly formed Intervention Response Team, stepped forward. His background in game theory had suddenly become crucial to humanity's future. "They made a mistake common to advanced civilizations. They assumed technological progress would follow a predictable path. They never considered that we might take shortcuts or make intuitive leaps. More importantly," Yuki added, "they didn't account for human stubbornness. Every time their hidden protocols should have nudged us toward a safer, more controlled path of development, we found another way. A messier way, perhaps, but one they couldn't predict." The evidence was becoming clear. Humanity had been part of a long-term observation project, their development carefully monitored and occasionally guided through subtle quantum manipulations. But somewhere along the way, the experiment had gone off the rails. "The question is," Director Hayes said, her voice cutting through the discussion, "what do we do with this information?" Dr. Wilson smiled for the first time since the crisis began. "We use their own protocols against them. They'd been watching us through quantum entanglement networks that span time itself. but they never considered we might learn to access those networks ourselves. Sarah brought up new data, this time from experiments conducted in the past week. We've already begun reverse engineering their quantum signatures. Their technology is advanced, yes, but it follows patterns we can understand. More importantly, we found gaps in their observation network, blind spots they don't know exist. Because they never expected us to look for them, Mason added. Their protocols were designed to guide and restrict, not to defend against active investigation. The plan that emerged over the next few hours was audacious. While the alien observers prepared for their inspection of Earth, humanity would use their own monitoring network to gather intelligence about them. Every quantum signature they had left behind was a potential source of information about their technology, their capabilities, and most importantly, their limitations. They expect resistance, Director Hayes noted, but they expect it to be direct. Physical. They're prepared for our military response, our technological defenses. They're not prepared for us to turn their own observation protocols into a weapon. Dr. Tanaka's team had already begun implementing the first phase. By analyzing the quantum signatures in archaeological records, they were learning to detect and interpret the observer's presence throughout history. Each interaction, each subtle manipulation, taught them more about how their watchers thought and operated. "There's something else," Sarah said, her expression thoughtful. "These protocols, they're not just technological, they're almost bureaucratic. Whoever our observers are, they follow strict procedures. Procedures that might be as binding on them as physical laws." The implications were staggering. Humanity hadn't just been dealing with advanced aliens. They had been dealing with what amounted to cosmic bureaucrats, bound by rules and regulations that might be thousands or millions of years old. "Then we do what humans have always done when faced with bureaucracy," Dr. Wilson said, a glint in his eye. "We find the loopholes." As the massive alien vessel continued its approach to Earth, humanity prepared not for a conventional confrontation, but for something far more subtle. They would use every tool at their disposal: science, ingenuity, and their newfound understanding of the hidden protocols that had shaped their history. "They think they're coming to inspect us," Director Hayes said, addressing the assembled scientists. "Instead, they're going to learn that their test subjects have not only seen through their experiment, but have begun conducting experiments of their own." In orbit around Earth, military vessels took up defensive positions, but the real action was happening in facilities like this one, where humans were doing what they did best: taking apart the rules of the universe to see how they worked, then finding ways to make them work better. The observers were about to learn that their protocols had created something they never intended, a species that had learned to think outside any box they tried to put it in. Breaking the cage. The alien vessel hung in space like a fractured diamond, its surface shifting and flowing in ways that defied conventional physics. From her position aboard the International Space Station's new quantum observatory, Dr. Sarah Chen watched as humanity prepared to implement their audacious plan. "Quantum network analysis complete," her assistant AI reported. "We've mapped 87% of their observation protocols. They're still transmitting data about us, completely unaware we can see it." Sarah allowed herself a small smile. The observers had been so focused on watching humanity that they never considered humans might learn to watch them back. The quantum signatures they used to monitor Earth's development had become a two-way window. In Geneva, Dr. Yuki Tanaka's team had made another breakthrough. "The protocols aren't just for observation," she reported through the quantum-secured channel. "They're regulatory. Every action the observers take has to be logged and justified according to their rules. They're bureaucrats with godlike technology. And bureaucrats always have weaknesses," Dr. James Wilson added, his game theory models running on displays behind him. "They can't act without authorization. They can't break their own rules. And most importantly, they have to document everything." The observers had sent their first official communication to Earth's governments 12 hours ago. It was exactly what the human scientists had predicted: a formal notice of inspection, citing regulations that were probably older than human civilization itself. "Signal from the observer vessel," the AI announced. "They're requesting docking clearance at the designated coordinates." Director Hayes, coordinating from the Lunar Command Center, gave the signal. "Begin Operation Mirror." Across Earth's orbital infrastructure, quantum sensors that had been hastily modified according to Sarah's designs powered up. They weren't weapons, at least not in any conventional sense. Instead, they were designed to do something far more dangerous: create paperwork. "Initiating protocol reflection," Sarah announced, her fingers dancing across holographic controls. "Quantum entanglement network engaging in 3, 2, 1. The effect was immediate and spectacular. Every observation protocol the aliens had in place suddenly began reporting back contradictory data. Their quantum networks, designed to monitor and record human activity, were now flooding their systems with conflicting information that all appeared completely legitimate according to their own rules. "They're responding," Mason reported from his station at Kuiper Belt. "Their quantum signature patterns are showing signs of confusion. The bureaucratic equivalent of a blue screen of death." The alien vessel's surface rippled like disturbed water. New signals began pouring in, but they weren't the confident pronouncements from before. Instead, they were requests for clarification, citations of regulations, and demands for proper documentation. "They've initiated their equivalent of an error-checking routine," Dr. Tanaka reported gleefully. "Every piece of contradictory data requires them to file reports and justify their actions. We're not fighting their technology. We're drowning them in red tape." The human response teams watched as the massive alien vessel seemed to pause, its very structure reflecting the uncertainty of its operators. According to their protocols, they needed to inspect Earth and its inhabitants. But according to those same protocols, the data they were receiving made such an inspection impossible without proper authorization. Authorization that would require explaining how humans had accessed their quantum network in the first place. "They're sending a new message," the AI announced. "Universal translator engaging." The message that appeared was nothing like the confident pronouncements from before. Query: "Unauthorized access to regulatory quantum networks detected. Explanation required. Submit Form HEX 7249B with full documentation of quantum signature acquisition protocols." Sarah couldn't help but laugh. "They want us to explain how we broke their rules using their official forms. Should we send them a help desk ticket?" "Better," Dr. Wilson said. "Let's send them every possible form, filled out in every possible way, all technically correct according to their own regulations, each form requiring its own review and response." Director Hayes nodded approval. "Do it. Let's show them what humans can do with bureaucracy when we put our minds to it." The next few hours were a demonstration of humanity at its most creatively obstructive. Teams of scientists and administrators, guided by AI analysis of the quantum protocols, generated an avalanche of official requests, reports, and appeals. Each document was perfectly formatted according to the observer's own standards, each requiring formal review and response. The alien vessel's surface began showing signs of what could only be described as distress. Its shifting patterns became erratic as its operators dealt with an unprecedented flood of properly filed paperwork. "New message incoming," the AI announced. "Priority signal." The message that appeared was shorter than the others. "Request: temporary suspension of inspection protocols pending administrative review. Timeline for resolution: indeterminate." "They're retreating," Mason observed as the alien vessel began moving away from Earth. "They can't proceed with the inspection because we've created too many procedural obstacles, and they can't ignore those obstacles without violating their own protocols." Sarah watched the massive ship withdraw, its surface still rippling with apparent confusion. "We didn't just break out of their cage," she said. "We used the bars to build our own administrative maze, and they have to solve it before they can do anything else." In the days that followed, humanity continued to monitor the quantum networks while preparing for the observer's eventual return. But now they knew something crucial. Even the most advanced civilizations could be stymied by their own rules, especially when faced with a species that had turned bureaucratic malicious compliance into an art form. The cage that had been meant to contain humanity had become a trap for their watchers, built not from technology they couldn't match, but from regulations they had learned to manipulate. It was a uniquely human solution to an unprecedented problem. And somewhere in the vastness of space, a group of very frustrated cosmic bureaucrats were discovering just how creative their test subjects could be. The bridge between stars. 3 weeks after Operation Mirror forced the observer vessel into retreat, humanity received an unexpected message through the quantum network. Dr. Sarah Chen was at her usual station on the ISS when the transmission came through, its quantum signature unlike anything they'd seen before. "This isn't from our regular observers," she announced to the assembled virtual council. "The encryption pattern is different. Someone else is reaching out." The message, when decoded, was surprisingly informal. "Greetings, humans. Your recent handling of the Regulatory Observation Corps has caused quite a stir. Perhaps we should talk." Director Hayes, her image projected from Luna Command, leaned forward. "Can we verify the source?" "It's coming through the same quantum network," Dr. Tanaka confirmed from Geneva. "But this entity has access to protocols our observers never used. Higher-level clearance, if I had to guess." The council debated for hours before agreeing to respond. When they did, they made sure to file the communication using every proper form they'd learned from the observer protocols, along with a few they creatively interpreted into existence. The response was almost immediate and carried a hint of amusement. "Your mastery of malicious compliance is impressive. Let me introduce myself. I represent the Galactic Administrative Appeals Board. Your recent actions have forced us to reconsider several million years of policy." Dr. Wilson's game theory models had predicted something like this might happen. "They're not just bureaucrats," he explained to the council. "They're bureaucrats with oversight committees. We didn't just jam up the local office. We forced a policy review." The alien representative, who called itself Administrative Adjudicator Zex, proved to be remarkably straightforward. Through a series of quantum conferences that would have given any normal physicist a headache, they explained the true situation. Your world was categorized as a developmental observation zone approximately 300,000 years ago. Zex transmitted. Standard protocols were established to guide your species toward what we considered optimal development. However, you have consistently defied optimization. We prefer to call it innovation. Sarah responded, earning a quantum pattern that their AI translated as laughter. "Indeed, your species has a unique talent for finding unexpected solutions. Case in point, when faced with technology you couldn't match, you weaponized our own administrative procedures. Do you know how many forms had to be filed just to begin this conversation?" The humans had a pretty good idea, having generated most of those forms themselves. But Zex wasn't finished. The Regulatory Observation Corps has existed for millions of years, overseeing the development of countless species. You are the first to not only detect their presence, but to effectively halt their operations through purely administrative means. This requires discussion. Over the next few days, humanity learned more about their place in the galaxy than they had in all their previous history. The universe, it seemed, was highly organized, not just physically, but administratively. Species were categorized, their development tracked, and their progress guided according to protocols established months ago. "But you," Zex transmitted, "you wonderful disasters, you forced us to confront the flexibility of our own systems. Your solution to being inspected was to create so much legitimate paperwork that the inspection became logistically impossible without violating other regulations. Do you realize this had never occurred to anyone before?" Dr. Tanaka, who had been analyzing the quantum protocols since first contact, had a revelation. Because other species either followed the guidance or tried to fight it directly. "We're the first ones to read the fine print and exploit it." "Precisely," Zex confirmed. "And in doing so, You've demonstrated exactly why our current protocols are inadequate. They assume rational, predictable development paths. You've shown us that intelligence can flourish in ways we never considered. The implications were enormous. Humanity hadn't just defended itself, they had inadvertently sparked a review of galactic administrative policy. Their creative use of bureaucratic warfare had demonstrated the need for more flexible oversight systems. We would like to offer Earth a unique position, Zex transmitted. Rather than being merely a subject of observation, we propose you join the Administrative Appeals Board as consultants. Your perspective on regulatory systems and their potential vulnerabilities would be invaluable. Sarah couldn't help but smile at the irony. You want us to help you bureaucracy-proof your bureaucracy. The quantum patterns of Zex's response carried distinct overtones of amusement. In essence, yes, you've demonstrated an unmatched ability to find loopholes while technically following all applicable regulations. Such talent should be utilized, not contained. Director Hayes called an emergency council meeting to discuss the offer. The debate was intense but ultimately short. The chance to help shape galactic policy, to ensure other developing species had the freedom to find their own paths, was too important to ignore. We accept, Hayes transmitted to Zex. Pending proper documentation, of course. We'll need all the relevant forms submitted in triplicate. This time, the quantum patterns definitely registered as laughter. I believe, Zex responded, that this is the beginning of a beautifully complicated administrative relationship. And so humanity found its place in the galactic community not through military might or technological superiority, but through their mastery of something far more subtle, the art of turning rules into opportunities. They had built a bridge between stars not with advanced physics, but with carefully filed paperwork and creative interpretation of regulations. The universe, it turned out, wasn't just stranger than they imagined. It was more bureaucratic than they imagined. And that was something humans knew exactly how to handle. A new dawn. 1 year after humanity joined the Galactic Administrative Appeals Board, Dr. Sarah Chen found herself in a position she never could have imagined. She stood, or rather, existed in a quantum-stabilized state, before the Grand Council of Galactic Administration, preparing to present humanity's first comprehensive review of existing regulatory frameworks. The council chamber defied traditional physics, existing in multiple dimensional states simultaneously. The assembled representatives from across the galaxy manifested in forms that would have driven classical physicists to despair. But Sarah had learned that the truly important universal constants weren't physical, they were administrative. Honorable Council, she began, her words translated into quantum patterns. Humanity has completed our initial analysis of galactic developmental protocols. Our findings are interesting. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, manifesting beside her, pulled up a holographic display of their research. We've identified approximately 47,893 potential loopholes in current regulations. For example, Article 7249B, regarding developmental observation protocols, can be interpreted in exactly 342 different ways, all of them technically correct. The council chamber rippled with quantum patterns indicating various degrees of alarm. Administrative Adjudicator Zex, now humanity's strongest ally in galactic bureaucracy, emanated what their translators interpreted as amusement. And this, Zex addressed the council, is exactly why we needed human perspective. They don't just find flaws in our systems, they find flaws we didn't even know could exist. From her quantum observation post near Alpha Centauri, Dr. James Wilson was already implementing some of humanity's proposed reforms. The former game theorist had found his true calling in galactic administration. The key, he explained to the council, isn't to make rules more restrictive, it's to make them more adaptable. The evidence was compelling. Under the old system, developing species were guided toward a predetermined optimal path. But humanity's example had shown that optimal was a far more flexible concept than previously believed. Consider Earth's development, Sarah continued. Every time the observers tried to nudge us toward their preferred path, we found an alternative route. Not because we were trying to break the rules, but because we saw possibilities they hadn't considered. The presentation continued with examples from human history, cases where apparent setbacks had led to unexpected breakthroughs, where incorrect approaches had produced revolutionary results. Each instance demonstrated the fundamental flaw in the old system. It assumed there was only one right way to progress. "We propose a new framework," Yuki announced, bringing up their model. "Instead of rigid protocols, we suggest adaptive oversight. Let developing species find their own paths. Monitor for safety, yes, but allow for innovation, even if it seems inefficient or illogical by current standards." The council chamber erupted in a chaos of quantum patterns as representatives debated the proposal. Some were horrified by the idea of loosening regulatory control. Others saw the potential for genuine evolution in galactic administration. From his position at the Kuiper Gulf station, Mason Rodriguez monitored the quantum traffic with satisfaction. "They're not just debating our proposal," he reported to Director Hayes. "They're already generating new forms to implement it. The bureaucracy is adapting." That was the true victory. Humanity hadn't just earned a place in galactic society. They had shown that even systems millions of years old could learn and grow. The universe was vast and full of wonders, but it turned out that one of the most wonderful things was the ability to look at ancient rules and ask, what if we tried something different? Back in the council chamber, the debate was settling into familiar patterns. Forms were being filed, procedures were being followed, but something had fundamentally changed. The galactic bureaucracy was learning to bend without breaking, to adapt without losing its essential structure. "There's one more thing," Sarah addressed the council. "We've been working on a new classification system for developing species. Instead of rating them by how closely they follow predetermined paths, we suggest evaluating their potential for innovation." Zex's quantum patterns brightened. "And how would humanity rate on this new scale?" Sarah smiled. "That's the beautiful part. We don't know. The scale has to be flexible enough to account for possibilities we haven't even imagined yet. After all, that's what got us here in the first place." The council's final decision was recorded in what humans would consider record time, merely 3 standard solar rotations. The new frameworks would be implemented gradually, with Earth serving as a test case for the more flexible protocols. As Sarah prepared to return to more conventional spacetime, she received one final message from Zex. "You humans have taught us something invaluable. The most perfect system isn't the one with the most rules. It's the one that knows when to rewrite them." Director Hayes, watching from Luna Command, summarized it best in her report to Earth's governments. "We went looking for our place among the stars and found it in the last place anyone expected, in the filing cabinets of cosmic bureaucracy. But maybe that's exactly where we needed to be. After all, who better to help guide the future than those who never stopped questioning the rules of the present?" As the quantum networks hummed with new protocols and possibilities, humanity settled into its unexpected role as the galaxy's administrative innovators. They had turned their greatest frustration, bureaucracy, into their greatest strength. And somewhere in the vast cosmic filing system, a new era was being recorded, one carefully filed form at a time.